And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast, to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into tonight's recap of the Detroit Pistons versus the Memphis Grizzlies, I want to make sure to remind you guys of a few things. Ryan Clothing Co. has officially dropped our holidays merch drop. So we have a bunch of different stocking stuffer items like mugs, stickers, like little mini handbags, and new knitted hats, and also new hats coming soon, by the way. And then we also have Protect the Ball merch drop. So if you want to find the link to that merch, you can click the link in our YouTube bio or in the description below of this video, and you will get to look at all the different options that you can buy for the holiday season, whether you add it to your Christmas list or you buy it for fellow Detroit Pistons fans. Anything is possible. So make sure to click the link and check out the new merch we have to offer. Also, I'm sorry if there's any audio issues or anything like that, visual issues. I forgot my laptop at work, so that's why I'm on my phone, and my mic is obviously in my office, so bear with us for tonight's recap. Also, I want to make sure that you guys like and subscribe. This week, we talk about everything that's going wrong with the Detroit Pistons and what we might have to do to fix those things. So make sure to go look at that video and give it a watch, and make sure to give it a like and comment. Without further ado, let's get into tonight's recap of the Detroit Pistons versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Tonight's final score was 116-102 in the Grizzlies' favor. This game was kind of complicated. You know, the first three quarters weren't bad. We were neck and neck with the Grizzlies, but we saw Desmond Bane drop 47 points, and we'll kind of, get into the specifics of that. But really, it was the fourth quarter that kind of shot the Pistons in the foot. They shot 23% with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, scoring only 9 points with 3 minutes and 40 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Ryan, it's kind of been something that's consistently happened for the Pistons where they struggle in the fourth quarter. What are some of your first thoughts?
Yeah, like and not just the fourth quarter alone. I mean, the fourth quarter was probably the most evident out of the quarters that we played tonight. But it seemed like we were getting the looks, we were getting open opportunities for shots. The ball movement was there, but the shots weren't falling, and that can come at the expense of, like, maybe you're not a great shooter, you shouldn't be shooting that shot, or it's not, or it's in the mindset of, like, it's in your head. That's why you're missing these shots when you really shouldn't be. We saw an opportunity where Asar Thompson, the Grizzlies were playing off of him. That's defense 101. Play off a guy that's not historically a great shooter. It's going to get in their head. They're going to miss the shot. That's what happened with Asar Thompson. He shouldn't have shot that. He really shouldn't have. He was wide open. He could have drove in, kicked it out, got a better look than what he actually ended up putting up. The shot clock was expiring. I know that. But, like, when you're shooting a wide open shot like that, there's no way you should be hitting the far right of the rim. Like, you're straight on. There's nobody around you, nobody contesting your shot, and you're still missing point blank. But it was just one of those frustrations tonight where we had the ball movement. Everybody was spacing the floor. We were getting great looks, but the shots weren't falling. And that's just going to come down to the mindset. What's going on in these guys' heads to hit these shots or miss these shots? Because that's a fixable thing, but it's just one of those big frustrations that we've been seeing as time goes on from game to game in late fourth quarter stretches.
And it's kind of funny because tonight's loss is our 18th loss in a row, but this game tonight kind of encapsulated all these last 17 losses previous to this one, because we saw in each one of these games that they couldn't finish it out in the fourth quarter. But then also in this losing streak, it hasn't been one player that is losing it for us. It's been a team loss and a team losing streak. And tonight it's kind of funny because there wasn't one specific player on the Pistons tonight that really struggled. We saw Jaden Ivey kind of have a nice comeback game where he showed a little bit of energy that he hadn't shown in a couple games. We saw Bojan get to the 22-point mark, Jalen Duren 17 points, Cade 16. No one like looking at the box score really like ruined the game for us. We just lost it as a team, and that kind of encapsulates the 17 losses before this game.
Yeah, and also I will point this out. The Grizzlies are, I believe, fourth in the league in what's the wording on it? Fourth in the league in forcing turnovers. They usually are averaging around 23 forced turnovers a night. The Pistons turn the ball over 16 times, which is actually low. We've been on a low trend of turnovers as of lately, which is good, meaning we're protecting the ball a lot more than we have. But like you have that, and even it was the fourth quarter. We just watched this. You have Cade Cunningham. It was like we're going back and forth a little bit. Cade's bringing it up, fakes the three, and then tries to like curve it around the defender to Isaiah Livers, which I mean, I can understand why you're doing that, but just passing the ball. Don't go too fancy with it, because what ended up happening is Desmond Bane ended up stealing the ball, and there you go, that steals the game. But like a lot of these passes that we're making, I think we're trying to be a little too fancy. They're trying to, and that's what today's basketball is. It's pretty much let's put on a show, get people to come watch us play because we're just going to entertain you the entire time rather than play good basketball. And that's what's been pretty much happening in our 18 games now that we've lost. Is we're trying to be a little too fancy. We're trying to make a pass in which, yeah, you could go the simple bounce pass route. You could go with the chest pass. You could go with the overhead. But what do you do instead? You go behind the back. Like these are the little things that can be fixed. And it's just a little bit frustrating when we're having these unforced turnovers happening right in front of us, in which we could be preventing. But instead, we're trying to be a little fancy out there and we're turning the ball over. But 16 turnovers overall compared to the last couple nights on this losing streak where we're having like 23, 24 plus turnovers a night, I will say that's a very big bright spot, but it's still a very big negative.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that the Pistons are trying to put a little too much oomph behind their passing, or when they're trying to back down a player, they're trying to be too fancy with it because they're getting away from the Detroit mantra of grit, tough-nosed basketball. And like you said, it can be fun to watch at times, and I talk about that in today's clip that I posted on Instagram, how there's not many teams that lose this much that are fun to watch. Like, yes, the Pistons are going to get those lob dunks. We saw really like 4 or 5 of them tonight, where we saw Jalen Duren get a big-time alley-oop, Ausar Thompson get a big-time alley-oop. But they're just not really playing winning basketball. And I kind of mentioned it before that the individual play isn't bad. We're seeing guys put up solid numbers, but kind of shoot inefficiently and not quite mixed together that well offensively yet. We saw Cade get 10 assists, which I really like to see because we haven't really been seeing him get to double-digit assists very often lately. So it was nice to see him get those double-digit assists. But right now, this team just hasn't really meshed yet. And yes, they have some of these big-time plays, but overall, it's just not quite winning basketball yet. And that's why I'm going to continue to preach that I think this team can turn it around, because they've shown that they can dominate at certain points in a game, but they just haven't gotten to the point where they can finish out these wins. And, we talked about it yesterday when we were driving around. We were like, oh, hopefully we can get that. The Pistons can get this win against the Grizzlies with all the injuries they're dealing with. But they're just kind of struggling with the same things they have been these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, like you look at what the Grizzlies brought out there as a product tonight against us. You have Derrick Rose coming back to Detroit. We always love you. We're always going to show you love. We had Desmond Bane come in and drop 49 on us, which is absurd. Jaren Jackson Jr. come in and drop 24. Roddy come in. It was just one of those games for him. He's not anything spectacular. He's just one of those good role players. Bismack Biyombo came in. I mean, the fact that he even scored is saying a lot because he's typically just a defender. That's his role. But like Santi Aldama is good too, but this team isn't loaded, right? They're not loaded right now. They're without John Morant due to suspension. They've been dealing with a lot of injuries to a lot of key guys, notably Steven Adams out for the season, I believe. So like they're not coming in there with a finished product, right? They're in the same ballpark, same position that we're in, except Jaren Jackson Jr. is like, if we're trying to compare our teams and our rosters the way they're built right now, it'd be Jaren Jackson Jr. is Cade Cunningham on steroids. That's the difference. Jaren Jackson Jr., Defensive Player of the Year last year, is one of those solid NBA players that you always want on your team because he's that good. He can bring the ball out, cross you up, hit the three. Like, he can do everything that you want him to possibly do. But like and Desmond Bane is the guy in which he can have hot streaks, but he's mainly there to just hit the shots when you need him to. But he comes in 36 minutes played, 19 of 31 from the field, has 49 points, 2 blocks, a steal, 8 assists, 6 boards, 7 of 7 from the line, 4 of 8 from 3. Like, he didn't have a bad game at all. Like, there's not much to look on the negatives. And that's been a case in every single game we've played in. We've always let one person absolutely tear us up.
Yeah.
And that goes and shows you that our defense is awful, because it's one thing to be letting all-stars like LaMelo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Jimmy Butler, etc. It's one thing for us to let them do that. It's a whole nother thing to let somebody in Desmond Bane, who's not the cream of the crop, who's not an all-star, who's not like a future first ballot Hall of Famer, just a guy who's a good role player, come in and drop 49 points on us. The Little Caesars Arena record for the most points is 51. He was at 49. He almost set the record, and he's just a role player. Like, that shows you how bad we are defensively, to the point where we're letting Desmond Bane come in and drop 49 points. I'm on a tangent right now, but that's to just go off of the point of Memphis is banged up, and just like we are, except we've been banged up for longer, so we've played together more as a team than they have recently. So you would think we should have won this game. So that's the point that I was trying to make. But Desmond Bane dropping 49 points on us is not good.
Yeah, it's absolutely brutal. And something that I noticed when watching the game, a common denominator in a lot of Desmond Bane's inside points, Cade Cunningham. Like, he was getting a lot of shots up over Cade Cunningham. That big time and one he got baseline that looked impossible, but he made it. It was over Cade Cunningham. A lot of these inside plays, Cade was getting exposed. There's something, a turn or there's something Cade's got to do on the defensive end, because it's just not cutting it. And a lot of the common denominators in these guys that are putting up big numbers against us, they're guards. You know, that's like a huge thing when you talk about the list. DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Jimmy Butler, Desmond Bane, some of these guys, Jordan Poole, some of these guys that were putting up big numbers against us, they're all guards. Well, Jalen Duren, who we're going to need to talk about after, you know, what happened tonight, he's able to kind of protect the paint at times against opposing centers. And I think that speaks to how great Jalen Duren is defensively. But if Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, some of these guards that we know just are struggling defensively, that's a worrisome, because it doesn't matter if Bojan puts up 22 points. If Jalen Duren goes 17 and 11, it doesn't matter these statistics. If we can't get stops, our guards can't get stops. And that's something that worries me. And this week, our topic that's going to be coming out Saturday is guys around the league that the Pistons could bring in to make an impact on the Pistons for a trade. And a lot of the common denominator in those, I'm not saying common denominator, but a lot of the things that those players are going to bring to the team that we're going to talk about is defense. So it's something that just keeps happening over and over again, is our guards getting stomped on defensively. And it's tough to see, but it's also good to know that we have something to diagnose, that we know, okay, well, this is what's going wrong. Okay, so if it's broken, we got to fix it. So it's sometimes hard, because in a losing streak, you don't always know what to address. And there was times during this losing streak, we didn't really know how to go about it, because it's just like, our guys were just struggling to score and struggling to shoot efficiently. Well, now these last couple of games against the Pacers, against the Raptors, against the Cavs, most recently, our guards aren't able to defend, and that's going to be something that needs to be addressed by Monty Williams. I mentioned him before. He's a guy I kind of want to spend a couple minutes talking about. Jalen Duren, we saw him in the fourth quarter go down with an ankle sprain, but I really liked statistically what we saw from him tonight. 17 points, 11 rebounds, and he's shooting efficiently every night. He's not putting up dumb shots. He's very smart with his shot selection, shooting 8 of 12 from the field. Ryan, what are some of your thoughts on Duren's play tonight, but also on the possible injury?
Yeah, it's every single game out there since coming in off the original right ankle sprain, he's been consistent on being a clutch player. I mean, the comment on one of our previous recaps that I honestly think the go-to guy, franchise guy right now, like I guess you could say the Batman, is Jalen Duren. Like he's the reason why we win or lose these games. Not to say like he's the reason why we lost this game tonight. He's not. He really isn't. He did everything in his power to help us win. Like the field goal, the fact that he was 8 of 12, it speaks volumes because every single night out there, he's either missing 4 shots or he's missing a minimum of 2 or 1. Like he's not missing much. And yet he's still very productive in the sense he's still giving you 17 points, still getting you double-digit points. And he's not taking a lot of shots. Like only taking 12 shots and being that productive shows you how good he is offensively, but then it shows you how good defensively he is too, and the fact that he's slowing down like Bismack Biyombo. Like Bismack Biyombo, yeah, he is old, but at one point in time, he was one of those cream of the crop, not like anything spectacular, but very, very solid in the big man position. And that's what Bismack Biyombo was in the early 2000s, and here we are now. He was one of those solid players. So the fact that you're holding a guy like him to the standard of pretty much only getting a shot up, or even Jaren Jackson Jr., who's normally very effective down below in the paint, only getting the 24-point mark, like that's low for him. So it shows you how good Duren has been. And then to speak on the injury, it bugs me a little bit more because it was his left ankle and not his right ankle. If it was his right ankle, I'm sitting there going like, crap, that might be like longer duration of him being out than what we're hoping. But the left ankle is still bad. Like the way he came down on, I can't remember who it was. It was either Bismack Biyombo or it was Roddy or Santi Aldama. It was one of those three. I don't remember exactly which player it was, but it came down on that ankle in a very, very weird way. And when you have him not even attempting to get up and you have him slamming his fists on the ground multiple times, like he knows something is wrong. Like it hurts. Like he's not even putting any pressure on it at all. And where he was grabbing on like the upper left part of his ankle, meaning not necessarily his ankle, but the upper left part, which is like that's getting to the ballpark of like he possibly tore something, or like he's going to be out for a while. It's not like he's going to come back in right away. So hopefully it's not like he tore anything. That's my hope. But like the fact that he didn't even try to move, and when he got up and he was trying to get help off the court, he was not really putting any pressure on his foot at all. So let's hope and pray that it's not anything too serious. But by the looks of it, he's probably going to be out for at least a month, I would say. And that's probably the max I would hope for. The minimum is probably a couple weeks. But by the looks of it, it doesn't. Those are the injuries in which, even though it doesn't look necessarily like tragic, like, whoa, what did I just watch? Those are the types of injuries still where it's like he's going to be out a while. Even if it's not tragic, those are typically the injuries that you're going to see these players out for a hot second. So hopefully it's not anything too serious, but it did not look good.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, oh no, that looks like a couple weeks. Just from the reaction, after following the Pistons for a while and watching the games, it's like, ooh, I don't like to see that out of Duren. And especially because, like, we know Asar and Duren are very fight through the pain. You know, they get beat up all game long just because of their play style. And to see Duren's reaction like that, you know he's a tough guy, and it's scary. But time will tell. We'll have to kind of wait and stay on Pistons Twitter and Pistons Instagram pages, kind of looking for updates, because I bet any hour or tomorrow, you know, we'll see a new update. So yeah, it's definitely it makes me weary, makes me a little bit nervous. I mentioned it earlier in the recap here, but I kind of wanted to spend a couple minutes too talking about Jaden Ivey. You know, you look at the box score, yes, only 9 points, 3 rebounds, 4 of 8 shooting, but we saw him integrate himself in tonight's game, and we haven't really seen that. I mean, pushing 7 games now. I mean, it's been a minute since Jaden Ivey's really integrated himself in a game, and we saw him active, making plays, trying to get out in the fast pace offense and get out and run on fast break. You know, so it was good to see. I want to know some of your thoughts when watching Jaden Ivey. Did you see that too? Like, just his body language was a little bit better.
Yeah, it seemed like he was trying to do everything he can to help them win. And the previous couple games, this is not me speaking negatively on who he is as a person or his character at all. This is not that. But out of the last couple games, you didn't see the emotion that you saw tonight out of Jaden Ivey. You saw him, you can tell that he's been trying to work his tail off, trying to be out there consistently, trying to do whatever he can to help the team win. But then there's also been moments in which he's a little bit slower than what we're used to seeing, but tonight was not it. He was flying all over the place, trying to do every little thing. And usually that's the role of like Isaiah Livers or the role of Asar Thompson. But we saw him have 3 steals and 2 blocks. I want to make note of that. And then also the 3 boards. 3 boards, 3 blocks, 3 boards, 3 steals, 2 blocks. It's a jumble right there. But I want to make note of those 3 stats alone, because usually you can tell how hard somebody's working by those 3, but then also like how they are on the court too. But he was everywhere. And that's what I like out of him. Like what we saw last year, we saw a guy that can get you a bucket whenever you want him to. He's like a flash of light. He's going to go speeding past you like the Flash, and he's going to weave in, weave out of any opposing defense, and he's going to finish at the rim, like nonstop. We saw that out of him. We saw him being electric. This year, we haven't seen an electric Jaden Ivey. We've seen a Jaden Ivey that's trying to get better right before our eyes. And that's been I know it's a negative for a lot of people that, oh, Jaden Ivey is not the same Jaden Ivey that we saw last year. Oh, Monty Williams has an out for Jaden Ivey. Now it's starting to cause friction within Jaden Ivey in the front office. I don't believe any of that. I don't think there's anything negative going on there. It's just Jaden Ivey, there's always a sophomore slump. He's going through that right now. He's not like doing anything poorly. He's not doing anything great. He's just in one of those grooves where he's not doing anything that's going to jump out of the box score. Because every single rookie going into their second year always struggles. Only the elite ones do good. Obviously, we saw that with Cade. Cade came in. It seemed like he was doing exactly what he left off of from his rookie year in those first 12 games. But then also from time to time, it's like, ew, Cade, that was not anything spectacular. And then he's out for the rest of the year with injury. So, like, the point is, Jaden Ivey is in his sophomore slump right now. He's not playing bad, not playing great, but he's going through the motions at this point. He's trying to do whatever he can to help us win, and he's trying to get better right in front of our eyes. And this box score from him tonight, I'm not complaining at all. Now, a lot of you are going to go like, oh, Jaden Ivey is not giving us double-digit scoring. That's terrible. Like, what changed from last year to this year? I don't think there's any issues other than, like, he's not getting as many shots. Obviously, he's not in the starting lineup. But Monty said going into this year, he would love to have Jaden Ivey starting for us. on a consistent basis because he is the best player out there. But he also wants to have the best lineups possible in different rotations. So he wants the starting group to have the best rotation out there, with allowing some of these guys that who typically would start come in with the second unit, the third unit, and etc. So trying to make sure we win on all levels out there. That's why Jaden Ivey is coming off the bench. He's not coming off the bench because Monty has something against him. He's not coming off the bench because he's playing bad. He's coming off the bench because Monty knows this guy is electric. He can help us win, and he's pretty much Robin to Cade Cunningham's Batman. Like, he's one of those guys that he's a staple in our offense, a staple in our defense, and I want him on the court at all times, even if that means I have to sacrifice not having him start and having him come on the floor off the bench. I'm willing to take that. Like, that's what's going on right now. Ivy's not playing bad. I'm not upset with this box score at all tonight. Like, he's doing his thing, and I'm happy to see how electric he was tonight.
Yeah, and I talked about it last season with Killian, how his body language sometimes seemed off, and he always kind of determined how he played with if he looked into the game or not and present. And it's really good to see Jaden Ivey just feel like he's integrating himself and getting active again. Because it's been worrisome for me a little bit the last 5 to 7 games, how he just doesn't seem in it, like he's trying too hard. And tonight was the first game where I'm like, oh, okay, Jaden, I see him moving. I see you trying to get out and run. And I was impressed and very happy to see it, because I agree. I think he's got an opportunity to be the Robin to Cade's Batman. I completely agree. One last point I want to make before we wrap up tonight's recap is tonight versus the Grizzlies. The Pistons were not outmatched. Desmond Bane just had a great game. And the point I want to prove by saying that is the Pistons in the second quarter went on an 11-2 run. We saw multiple times in this game where the Pistons would go 9-3, 12-4. These offensive runs compared to the Grizzlies. And the only quarter they were outscored in a quarter drastically was the fourth. So this isn't a team that can't compete with these low-level teams. Yes, people are going to say that they're the worst team in the league, but they are competing with these guys, and it's really the fourth quarter that is determining these wins or losses. And when we play against Orlando, Indiana, Philadelphia, we should be able to compete with Orlando and Indiana. Philadelphia might be debatable, but we're able to compete with a lot of these Eastern Conference teams. I know we're on an 18-game losing streak, but if you're a Pistons fan and you're watching this right now, you got to look at the statistics throughout the whole fourth quarters of the game. You can't look at just the fourth and final quarter where everything went wrong, because you're not reading the whole story. You have to look at those third quarters and look at the runs the Pistons went on, because those are legitimate. Those are reasons why it was close coming into the fourth quarter. So this team has shines of positives. It's not all just negatives in an 18-game losing streak. There's also those little things and those intricacies of four quarters that you got to look at. And you got to dig a little bit to find the positives, but they're there.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. There are a lot of positives and a lot more to, honestly, negatives at times. There are multiple flashes that have been shown from time to time, especially with Bojan being back out there with us. Bojan's helped bring together everybody. He's been one of those filler guys that we've missed, because he's one of those unspoken leaders. That's who Bojan Bogdanovic is. We were talking about it last year, where it seemed like Bojan wasn't mixing well. Well, we were completely wrong. He's mixed just fine. He's one of those guys that he doesn't need to talk a lot to be effective in the locker room. He doesn't need to talk a lot to be effective out there on the court playing. He's one of those guys, like, if he says it, you got to do it, because he knows exactly what he's talking about. He's a very smart player. He's a very smart just individual in general. So when you have Bojan Bogdanovic out there commanding the offense, commanding the defense like he is, it's helped us to go on runs that we didn't ever go on before he was there. Now, we did go on runs from time to time. Yeah, that is good. But the runs with Bojan have been completely different, because they've been more effective. We've slowed down the opposing team's lanes from time to time. We're clogging them, making sure they can't come through. Bojan is communicating on all facets of the court. And I know I'm highlighting Bojan a lot right now, but like, imagine what it's going to be like when Monte Morris is out there with us. Imagine what it's going to be like when Joe Harris is back out there again with us. Like, these vet players, along with our young guys, imagine how effective our runs will be with these vets, because they know how to play the game of basketball. They know what it takes to be in the NBA, and they've succeeded at a high level for a long time. So I can't imagine how much excitement we're going to have seeing these runs and the effectiveness of them going forward when we get all these vets back, because what we've been able to see from having no Bojan to Bojan is pretty impressive, because we're seeing these guys flying around there on all cylinders, making the smart plays when they need to. But then there's also been times where we talked about it earlier. We go and try and be a little too fancy at times. That's typically when Bojan's not out there. So I just have to throw that out there. But like, this team is making flashes before our eyes, and there are a lot of negatives. We do lose games. We're losing 18 straight now, but there are also a lot of positives too.
Yeah, for us, when we are speaking to Pistons fans, it's important. We have to talk about the negatives, but we also, in all the negatives, there's always positives. And one day we're going to be talking about all the positives. There'll be less negatives, but if we have to be partial to the people. We got to talk a little bit of everything, and that's what we're going to be doing. That will do it for tonight's recap of the Detroit Pistons versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Tonight's final score was 116-102 in the Memphis Grizzlies' favor. Before you guys leave, I want to make sure to remind you guys to comment below your thoughts on tonight's game versus the Memphis Grizzlies and some of your takeaways in the last 18 losses with the Detroit Pistons. We would love to know some of your guys' thoughts after kind of letting you guys know about our thoughts. We will see you guys in the next Revved Up recap. Peace.